Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats so we can start.
Ξεκινάμε. Begin. Good morning, καλημέρα σας. Είναι η ώρα με μια μικρή...
Good morning. We have a short delay, so it's time for us to start with our second plenary session. The topic is very interesting, but there is also a very interesting panel from the US and Greece, people who are very experienced, and they will help us to visit the issue from many points of view and start a discussion in the room. So the topic of the session is the conflict between philanthropic and public interests. It's the conflict between the interests of philanthropic institutions and the public world, the state. This is an issue that we come across very often in philanthropic givings, coming from the private sector, and usually the answers are multiple. We have many solutions that are available. We have experience both in Greece and the US. Of course, in the US, the approach of philanthropic institutions is different. There are different sizes and scales. In Greece, we have a smaller scale, but we have a huge tradition beginning at the roots of the Greek state. Now, what is the question that is being raised here, and which our experts will have to answer? When we have an action, an intervention in the public sector, the question that comes up is who shall define the use and the symbolic value of the public area, the public sphere where this intervention will take place. We know that those who propose a project to the state in a deserted building plot, in a square, people who want to build a new building for people to be able to use it, these people actually would like to explore new fields of symbolic action and actually build new symbols. And this is an open discussion and has also to do with who will benefit from the symbolic value: the donor, the community, the local neighborhood, the urban community that will use and develop this project in the future. There are many answers, and there is not always conflict. Sometimes we can have, let's say, complementary roles. But let's now listen to the experience, the field experience that most of our panelists have, because they are at the peak of huge projects, and they have a long experience with interventions in the urban areas. For instance, Professor Mark Stern from the University of Pennsylvania, who is not only a scholar and a professor, but he has a huge experience with interventions in poor areas of Pennsylvania and Philadelphia. He is one of the distinguished speakers that we have with us today. Then we have another person from the US, well-acclaimed representative of MoMA, an emblematic, let's say, museum, both for its content and its methods, but also for the way it is structured. It has always been a huge museum built by private initiative, and it has always been open to the public, to the city, not only the city of New York. In a sense, it's one of the most international museums, one of the most popular museums. It's open to the public sphere. And it is also a museum which has aroused our interest in different stages of its construction. It's in the different ways it has chosen to use in engaging in the city actions and activities. And then we have another person from MoMA, the Senior Deputy Director of External Affairs, Todd Bishop. Todd and Mark, welcome to the panel. Now, from the Greek side, we have Mr. Dimitris Daskalopoulos. The Greeks know him because he has been for more than 10 years president of the Association of Greek Businesses. Now, he is no longer in this position, but he is a well-experienced businessman and a Greek citizen who has established a cultural foundation, not-for-profit foundation, NEON, which seeks to build bridges between the Greek public and modern art and culture. One of the elements of the constituent elements of this action is art. So he will explain how he decided to start being active in this field, what were his first experiences, and how developments, how he assesses current developments. And then we have Effie Tiotsou from the Onassis Foundation, another foundation that has had multiple interventions in Greece. She will speak about her experience with the Onassis Foundation, and I would like to hear from Mrs. Ciociu something about a big project they had proposed, Rethink Athens. This is the name of the project. This would change the urban center of Athens, the historical center of Athens. And there have been many arguments from different sides for and against this project. And then we finally have Mr. Thomas Verviciotis, co-founder of the Paradigmatos Charin Foundation. Paradigmatos Charin in Greek means, for example. This is a new foundation which seeks to enter the field of philanthropy with new ideas, fresh ideas, and he will speak about his own, let's say, experience with art. And then we will. And now let's start with Mr. Daskalopoulos. I've already presented him, so let's ask him to give us his experience with the Youth Institute and tell us whether he feels that this is the continuation of, that he's the part of the continuum of Greek benefactors. Have you considered that?
Well, I think that models are always very useful, but what is very important are the needs and the reality of our times. Perhaps for the same reasons, the benefactors that we are very proud of, justly so, irrespective if certain question marks have been attached with respect to their incentives, but I will talk about that also. They also responded to certain needs of their times. Of course, now in Greece, after a very severe crisis, which still will continue for quite a while now, we are in a process of creative change, irrespective of the financials. Society is in transformation, not only something that's imposed through the economy and because of the economy, but it has to do with our conscience. It has to do with our culture. And I think this is something that we must all push forward. And there are also great needs that have to do with the economic change. So there is the demand, the imperative, the need and the aspiration for us to contribute. We have this great change, which the state on which we all depended and will no longer be by our side in the same manner. So that means that the contribution of the private sector is more necessary than ever before, and it is now more acceptable. So I'm very pleased that we have many such initiatives that are taking place. They have a vision. They're done in an organized manner, and I think they will really make the difference. Now, our activity in Neon starts from the belief that this crisis that we have experienced was not a purely economic one. It was mainly a cultural one. So, in order to avoid any such crisis in the future, we must change the structures of our society, our institutions and behavior, and in this effort, modern art, its ideas, the freedom that has to do with creativity can contribute greatly in order to fashion a future behavior, create a different form of collectivity, which will help avert such crises. Of course, in a country that has such a strong tradition in culture, it's very important for us to actually deploy our modern culture in conjunction with our ancient civilization and culture to deploy it as an instrument for growth and creativity. So this is a reality. We know it. It's a fact that a lot of people who come as tourists to Greece do it because of our civilization. And there are a lot of opportunities. And we see that such action around culture and art can give rise to jobs. That means that we can find jobs for those who are without. I think this is one of the major challenges in our society. Also, it's very important, together with the ideas of modern art and collectivity, for us to believe in our own creativity here today. It is very necessary for us to progress. We must believe in our own ability to create. In the sector of culture, we know that the weight of the Parthenon and Phidias actually are, in fact, a heritage that might cause awe. So we see that the bar has been set very high indeed, and we see the creativity of modern Greeks is huge. So that means that we also must believe, or at least hope, that we can also create something which in 2,500 years' time will be actually seen with awe. And that means we've tried to exhibit to the public at large the ideas of modern art and how this can, in fact, touch our minds and heart. And we do this with public and private sectors. And we don't have our own venue. We go where the citizens are. That means that our actions has an educational aspect attached. So we have, in fact, an educational program for the third year of high school. And we are actually working together with public sectors. We're going to work together with the Museum of Modern Art, the Public Museum of Modern Art, and we really will work together because this is about to open, and it's going to be a lighthouse, a beacon for modern art. And we want to bring art to public spaces. We believe that public spaces in Greece must be reconquered. It's something that we had, in fact, left to be vandalized, to the protest marches, and in a world where people want to live outside, that where we must have greater collectivity, we must have a better relationship with our city. In such a world, public spaces must be reoccupied. And that is where our action lays. I will end here in order to have time for questions.
Mrs. Tsiotsiou can take on from where Dimitris Daskalopoulos stopped, i.e. from his wish to help people go to public spaces. And he says reconquer, reoccupy public space. I'm going to ask him, and he's going to answer later, but I'd like to ask you, who is actually reoccupying the public space? Who had it and who is now reoccupying it? When you say rethink Athens, who's actually rethinking Athens? Is it the architect? Is it the project person who inspired the idea of the project, or is it the Athenians themselves who reoccupy public space? So maybe there's some patronage, meaning we see that the benefactor or the person who's coming up with a project may actually be doing so together with society. So let me start from there. Do you want me to answer the question, or do you want me to give my presentation first? So what you've asked me is an excellent question, and I think this is something of matter to us all. And we're talking about a collective procedure where we have the engagement of all stakeholders, the state, the citizens, and anybody else who's interested in achieving this. But we're talking about large-scale projects. The state must be supervising these projects. And I'd like to talk about the Onassis Foundation. Sometimes there's a misunderstanding that we redesigned the public space in downtown Athens. That is not true. We accepted an invitation, an official invitation made by the Ministry for Environment and Climate Change, which is the competent authority. So we were asked to carry out these studies, and then these studies would be given to the state. So the Onassis Foundation has not participated in the process. So the state asked the foundation to create a study on how the center of Athens will be changed. No. The state decided there should be a metropolitan intervention, and there were first two research projects on NTUA. This was on land use matters, on traffic matters. This was given to the ministry. Then they came up with a plan, and that's where the Onassis Foundation came along, and we actually wanted to facilitate all the processes, but everything was decided by the state. We did not do something on our own. Everything was done by the state. They had prepared everything, and then we responded to their call. That's how it happened. Okay. So I also have a presentation to make.
Hello, I would like to speak in English, if I may. I would like to extend my sincere thanks on behalf of the administration of the Onassis Foundation to the Stavros Niarchos Foundation for the kind invitation for the foundation to participate in this very important initiative. I find this a great opportunity to share a few thoughts with you and to hear yours on the much deliberated topic of philanthropy that these days is more appropriate and timely than ever before. There are many ways to express kindness, and one may choose the means, beneficiary, even the reciprocity of one's kind action. When it comes to public benefit foundations, much is to be considered before any engagement in an activity for the benefit of third parties. Sometimes a blurry line divides kindness and ultimate benefit, whereas in a society of many opinions, thoughts, and personalities, often things can be implied, or worse yet, clearly stated. This, however, should not mean that we do not need to try as hard as possible as a citizen to read between the lines or to do our best as a foundation despite such discouraging convictions. After all, Aristotle Onassis used to say that we must free ourselves from the hope that the sea will ever rest. We must learn to sail in high wings. Since its establishment in 1954, the Onassis Foundation has been expressing the wishes of its founder, who believed that education and culture should be a vehicle towards the advancement of all people. In that framework, the Onassis Foundation has focused its activity on education, culture, social solidarity, health, the environment, and the dissemination of Hellenic culture throughout the world. The Foundation's administration has over the year decided on thousands of scholarships to Greek and foreign students and academics. It has supported the arts through the establishment of the Onassis Cultural Center in Syngrou Avenue in Athens, which in the 4 years of its operation has evolved into a hub of contemporary artistic expression of all forms, while also operating a rich educational program addressed to all ages and all social groups. The Foundation also has supported multiple chairs of Hellenic studies in universities abroad, where the will to embrace Greek civilization is present, but the means are scarce. It has offered assistance to multiple schools with a particular focus on those that offer special education. It has dedicated in Athens the Onassis Cardiac Surgery Center, and it also has supported educational, cultural, environmental, and health-related requests from multiple institutions worldwide. It has also significantly contributed to the dissemination of Greek language and civilization abroad, and especially in North and South America and Canada, through the affiliate Onassis Foundation in New York City. Cultural philanthropy has been accused of privileging trivial issues over unresolved, acute, and burning problems of the society. Although the arts and all aspects of culture are important to the Onassis Foundation. They're a great form of wealth since they have the power to not only educate in direct or indirect ways and shape the minds of people, but also to provide a medium to achieve emotional health. Another successful program that we have is the visual dialogues that were created in the leisure park of the Plato's Academy in Athens, where installations and artistic works were presented for 3 years, consecutive years, with a massive contribution of the public. Practical needs are indeed a priority, but we should not ignore the cultural aspects of life as well, even amidst a very difficult social and financial time such as this. Here you see the Onassis Cultural Center in the interior and the exterior. You see the Onassis Cardiac Surgery Center that I just mentioned, our foundation in New York City. Another firm belief of ours is that the public funded foundations should be flexible and aware of current needs. A recent example of such action is the Rethink Athens project, which was not a private concept or initiative I just mentioned before, but part of a central decision of the Greek state for the broader metropolitan centrality planning of the city of Athens on multiple levels and various large-scale projects. I feel the need, as I said before, to be clear about this, since one of the things that seem to frequently be coming up in conversations is the supposed involvement of the foundation in an issue that should be mainly a concern of the Greek state. And indeed, it is. It is a concern of two relevant involved ministries, of the city of Athens and the region of Attica. Philanthropy can have a lot of connotations, and in this case, it can be a starting point for misconceptions that may lead to mistrust, and the vague but still harmful notion that philanthropy may involve a hidden agenda rather than a clear given purpose. The notion that there is a conspiracy of wealth foundations or individuals creating agendas through their giving is a disappointing scenario for our civilized society. The foundation feels that things should be addressed individually, and in that respect has made a lot of effort to one hand give away to the numerous experts and on the other to support citizen initiatives through participatory procedures, such as the project is by co-funding the Reactivate Athens 101 Ideas, a research project that has been implemented in collaboration with ETH Zurich to collect ideas and thoughts of the Athens city center inhabitants who were given the opportunity to say out loud what bothers them about their city and what they would like to see to be done differently in it. This is a social investment, a definition of philanthropy that involves time, dedication, skills, knowledge, human and technical resources, along with financial contribution. We will soon deliver a number of exceptional ideas, which we hope that will be put in good use by the city of Athens, which is the final recipient of this abundance of new ideas. We believe that people should stick by their principles, should they firmly believe in them. As agreed earlier on, the Onassis Foundation will not be involved in the actual implementation of the Rethink Athens project. However, we will be here to watch over and demand for the completion, looking forward to winning the bet for an Athens that is safe, clean, environmentally pleasant, and upgraded, a competitive European city, and a true heritage to the fallen generations. So what we have established so far is that philanthropy could be sculpted, painted, performed, danced, and in the case of Rethink Athens, it could also be built. But should a public benefit foundation get involved in public space activity and even more public space intervention? Who gets to decide? Truth be told, foundations exist for the purpose of supporting society one way or another. Whatever the cause, financial, artistic, or otherwise, foundations should provide the means, but decisions regarding public spaces in large-scale projects should be made by the public sector. In a perfect world, though, roles would be clear and specific. State obligations would be promptly and timely met, and no need for intervention would be necessary. But we all know there is no perfect country, no perfect city, or even a perfect public administration. So in an intermediate is called, in case of the Rethink Athens project, to assume the role of the facilitator and of the accelerator for time-consuming actions that we all know is part of the Greek public sector reality. This is the role of the Onassis Foundation, has assumed in the Rethink Athens project, and we strongly feel that we have done our best to this extent. So at this point, let me make a few key points on this much anticipated and well-reserved program for the reorganization of the city center that is expressed to breathe life back to the center of Greece's capital, many areas of which have been severely degraded over the years. If Athens is to play an important role in Europe, it needs to regain its former glory and become a competitive European metropolis. It needs to inspire both its inhabitants and its visitors. The Rethink Athens project succeeded the completion of traffic and urban studies that were implemented through a collaboration of public bodies with the National Technical University of Athens during the period 2009-2012. In 2011, the Greek state addressed an invitation to the Onassis Foundation for the organization of the European Architectural Competition and the funding of a total of 33 technical studies with the contribution of more than 60 scientists from Greece and abroad under state supervision. The Foundation's involvement in this project was validated through the legislative rules and decisions of the involved ministries. The Ministry of Environment, Culture, Energy, and Climate Change, and the Ministry, Energy and Climate Change, and the Ministry of Infrastructure, Transport, and Networks, together with simultaneous agreements with the City of Athens and the region of Attica. It should be noted that during the entire process, the Foundation has had the opportunity to collaborate with quite a few exceptional civil servants in higher or lower positions, and has collected many instances of exemplary action and coordination during 3 years collaboration with the above public sectors that are involved in the project. All of the studies necessary for the implementation of the Rethink Athens project were completed by the end of 2013. Yes, I will be done. Whereas contribution is expected to begin in December 2014 through European and national funds. Here you see the new picture, a photorealistic picture of Panepistimiou Street. Here are the aims of the Rethink Athens project, which are very, very based, the functional and aesthetic upgrade, the enhancement of commercial, administrative, and financial operations, the return of private residence, the emergence of the historic and cultural profile, the enhancement of the sustainable mobility, and the improvement of the quality of citizens. Here you see another picture of Panepistimiou. I will just focus on the issue that this overall design does not incorporate the concept of pedestrianization, but rather the mixed use of streets as you see on the pictures, and especially Panepistimiou Street by tram, special taxi bus lanes, buses, and other catering and emergency vehicles for roadside services. As I said, there have been a lot of advanced traffic studies that have already been made by the state and the Attica Metro and the relevant public sector's bodies. Of course, there is an environmental upgrade. We will regain the public squares. Here you see Panepistimiou Street, where you have the mixed use of tram and public means of transportation. Here you see Omonia Square, which regains its neoclassical shape. We have plants, we have 800 more trees in the area. And one of the very innovative things about is the water management. I will just focus on this and I will finish with this. Controlling rainwater is one of the project's biggest innovations, as I said. During rainfall, water will be immediately collected from the streets and building roofs in underground reservoirs in Panepistimiou Street and elsewhere, thereby ensuring irrigation autonomy for 3 months and the cleanliness of the public space without the use of the valuable drinking water. 25 million liters of water will be saved and used for that purpose, as I said. This is Korai Street. The trees and the plants that will be planted. You see the yearly cycle of colors and perfumes of the city year. This is the water strategy that I just mentioned. Now, the natural stones in different shapes that will be used for the pavement of the streets. Here's the urban furniture, which is also very important for the inhabitants and the visitors. Very natural materials will be used for the kiosks, the pergolas, the tram stations, and everything. The lighting, which is also very important. So I will just finish by saying a few words. So, as I said, the Onassis Foundation firmly believes in caring for the future. A trying time should not lead to inertia. What we prepare for now will be as an asset a few years ahead. The extensive demand expressed by the civil society for the immediate and permanent resolution of current social, political, educational, and cultural issues should involve action by small and not large group initiatives, public benefit foundations, NGOs, and the state itself in various levels of authority. Only when this is the case, we will be able to achieve a solid, successful change. Even one action can make a difference. Have you heard of the story of the child with the starfish? Once upon a time, there was a man walking along the beach and saw a boy picking up starfish and throwing them into the sea. Then the man asked, why is he throwing the starfish into the sea? And the boy replied, the tide is going out. If I don't throw them in, they'll dry up and die. The man smiled patronizingly and said, but there are miles of beach and thousands of starfish on every mile. You can't possibly make a difference. The boy smiled, bent down, picked up another starfish and threw it into the sea. Well, he said, I made a difference for that one. There you have it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Ευχαριστούμε την κυρία Τσιότσιου. Μας έδειξε την...
Thank you very much, Mrs. Chochiu, for demonstrating the project financed by the Onassis Foundation. The name is Rethink Athens. We will come back and speak a little bit more about the rationale behind this project. And now we will listen to Marcus Stern, Professor Marcus Stern from UPenn, the University of Pennsylvania. He's professor of social policy and history, social policy and practice, and he will speak about the urban studies program of the university. This university is one of the most important universities of the US. It's a state where poor neighborhoods and ghettos exist. Mr. Stern supervises the theoretical part of interventions, but also has practical experience from interventions.
We want to listen to you.
Great, thank you, Nikos. I thought I was going to be saying good morning, but I guess I should properly say good afternoon. I'm going to make some remarks both from my standpoint as a historian of American social welfare and from my experience doing community arts research in collaboration with Susan Seifert, who spoke earlier today. I'm going to make 3 points, so what I'm going to do is just go through them 1, 2, 3, and then come back and fill in a little bit. So the first point is zombie ideas and philanthropy's opportunity. The second point is, does philanthropy mimic or serve as a counterweight to markets? And the third point is how philanthropic marketization is undermining the impact of community cultural engagement. Okay, so those are my 3 points. Let me go back to the first one. The first question here is, does zombie translate into Greek? Is that okay? Okay, so I'm good with that. So, as you know, zombies are walking dead, and zombie ideas are ideas that should die but haven't. We're here in Greece, so I don't have to mention to you or emphasize too strongly the economic catastrophe that the entire world has experienced over the past several years as a result of a set of very strong ideas. Ideas around deregulation, ideas around balanced budgets and tax cuts, ideas about reducing the social rights of citizens. These ideas are at the center of the catastrophe that the whole world has experienced, and they should have died. But in a situation where you have a crisis, you have 2 choices coming out of the crisis. Either you can use the crisis to rethink how you go about operating the world, or you can fall back into the old ideas and reuse them. It is my sense sitting here in 2014 that unfortunately, I think the second has won, and that we are back into a world where these old ideas are again dominant in terms of determining economic policy. But this provides an opportunity for philanthropy and for the third sector to take action. If we look at the history of social welfare, and again, I'm speaking only from the experience of the United States. It's quite limited and, of course, quite short compared to the history of Greece. But what we've seen in that history is that during periods of economic cataclysm, or after those periods, very often, as in the case now, the status quo wins. Again, it comes back and has the same ideas, but the crisis creates a period of ferment in which new ideas and new institutions come into being. So, for example, in the United States, after the economic crisis of the 1890s, we had a period that in the United States we call progressivism. During this period, if you look at it from the standpoint of long-range change in terms of policy, it was a failure. But it was a period in which new ideas about child welfare, about maternal health, new institutions like the professions of city planning and social work came into being. So that's the opportunity that the third sector and philanthropy provides in a situation where the status quo wins in terms of preserving zombie ideas. The second point has to do with, should philanthropy mimic this market, or should it act as a counterweight? During this morning's conversation, there was more or less an assumption that philanthropy acts somewhat as a counterweight to what may be going on in the market. It might be policy, it might be doing direct giving to particular projects, but it was overall doing things that the market wasn't doing. However, I think there's a very strong trend, particularly in the United States perhaps, and what some have called the marketization of the nonprofit sector, in which the values of the market begin to drive investments in the third sector as well. So things like balanced budget, earned income, a third thing I have written down here that I can no longer read, come into being as a way of driving, so that the philanthropy starts acting as if it's trying, again, to mimic the market. And my third point is that what we're seeing in Philadelphia in particular, again, in this work I've been doing over the past 20 years with Susan, we see that the philanthropic marketization has really been undermining one of the sectors that we've been studying, the community cultural sector. So as Susan mentioned, we've been doing this work for 20 years. We found a set of durable connections between the presence of cultural engagement in neighborhoods and improvement in public health, improvement in child welfare outcomes, improvement or reductions in terms of ethnic and racial harassment, and overall community revitalization as a result of the arts. But however, at this point I'm going to stand up and go look for the clicker. Perhaps you thought I just put this up so my name would be up during my whole presentation, but hopefully not. So as I said, we found these connections, but then more recently we found some worrisome things. I forget that no one can read a scatter plot. Take my word, one of the things we found is that it used to be that while there was some connection between the wealth of a neighborhood and how many arts opportunities there were, that relationship over the past 20 years has gotten much, much stronger. So today, if you live in Philadelphia and if you're in a poor neighborhood, you have many, many fewer cultural resources in your immediate area than you did 15 years ago. A second point we found is that connected to this, that area, what we used to call community cultural clusters, areas of the city where there was a concentration of cultural assets in a neighborhood that might be quite poor. Of course, how many of you have been to Philadelphia? Okay, so anyway, if you're from Greece and you come as a tourist, the neighborhoods that Susan and I work in, you never visit. North Philadelphia is a large African-American and Latino neighborhood with very high poverty. West Philadelphia, here's my university here, but out here in West Philadelphia, again, is a very low-income African-American neighborhood. And then there's a sector of low-income African-Americans who live here in South Philadelphia. You can see, maybe you can't see because it's not so good, but some of these light gray areas are places that used to be community cultural clusters and are no longer. That correlation between income and cultural opportunities has robbed these neighborhoods of their cultural assets. We've done this work for so long, we've actually now gone on to look at where are our organizations dying. I don't know if that comes across, but we looked at organizations in the 90s and today, and we said, where were organizations that used to be there and are no more. And this map shows where that happened. And as you can see, this low-income neighborhood in South Philly, in West Philadelphia, and North Philadelphia had a very, very high rate of neighborhoods that died during the last 15 years. So these things got us thinking, what are the causes of these? And there are a variety of things that we wanted to look at. One of them that we just started this year was looking at the role of philanthropy in terms of influencing where culture is in the city. I started this, in fact, with a student project with some of my social work students last semester, and then we've continued it over the summer. It's not finished, but this is just a map. These brown areas are sections of the city, if they're outlined in red, low-income African-American and Latino neighborhoods that essentially lost all of their funding during this period. So I'm not here to make a causal argument, but I think there's a very clear case that there is this correlation between where this is actually data on one particular philanthropy, where this philanthropy decided to put its money and not put its money, and to what's happened in terms of cultural opportunities for low-income people in Philadelphia. So my closing point is that we've proven that arts and culture can have a significant impact on the social well-being of low-income neighborhoods. But if you want to have that impact, you have to make the investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark, for your remarks. And Thomas.
Mr. Varvitsiotis is one of the co-founders of Paradigmatos Chari, which is an organization. He has some experience from the last few years. And I think it would be very interesting to see how one can start at a very difficult point in time for Greece. What the first feedback they have to give us is, and how does the initial thinking change?
Everyone, I would like, on behalf of Paradigmatos Chari, to thank a lot the Niarchos Foundation for inviting us here today. And we are especially honored to be in such a distinguished panel with such big institutions like MoMA, Neon, or Nice Foundation. We are a startup in the NGO community, so 2 years ago, 5 Athenians, including myself, established the NGO organization Paradigmatos Chari, which means by example, driven primarily by our wish to help tackle the increasingly deteriorating quality of life, which has been brought about by the current socio-economic crisis. My purpose today is to transport you to the reality of PH, its purpose and actions, as well as the steps it has taken so far in an attempt to understand how a small organization like PH is related to the local community, discovering in parallel what is the connection between philanthropy and public interest. PH is an organization that seeks to provide quality support to the average citizen, primarily in urban centers, stimulating social cohesion and fostering social awareness. Its actions are addressed to all and are not intended to meet survival needs, but life needs. More specifically, the scope of the actions undertaken by PH consists in the implementation of small-scale, low-cost regeneration projects with a strong aesthetic and functional impact in the neighborhoods of Athens and other cities around Greece. In other words, we seek to create simple projects of high quality, and in doing so, to raise the bar for similar initiatives so that our small-scale projects become an example for society at large. That's how the name came from. Through our initiative, our goal is to mobilize the most dynamic groups within society, especially the young people, who are also experiencing more severely the narrowing down of prospects for the future. Thus, with the support of Niarchos Foundation and in collaboration with the municipality of Athens, we have already embarked in the implementation of the first PHI project called PHI Athens, involving the study, redesign, and regeneration of playgrounds in the Athens city center, drawing on high standards of architectural design to make these playgrounds functional and attractive to children and young parents. And what we have achieved so far, we have completed already the renovation of 2 playgrounds, the one located in Kalisperi Street next to the new Museum of Acropolis, and in Raftopoulou Street in Neo Cosmos. Now we're going to the second phase. We're going to study and redesign another 12 playgrounds in all the municipal districts of Athens, utilizing funds under the municipality's European programs and the Niachos Foundation. We are planning by September to invite and express interest from young architects, Greek architects and landscapers to bring ideas, and then the 12 best of them to be executed on the playgrounds. The strategic partners of PHI are private sponsors who provide financial assistance and moral support. It is also very important to mention that in addition to funds, we also seek to mobilize volunteers with the appropriate know-how in order to ensure that the result of our initiatives is flawless and complete. Very early on, even before starting the PHI, we knew that our initiative addresses the general public. Therefore, it was very, very critical for us to ensure that our actions would be very compatible with their everyday life, in the local neighborhood, and most of all, with their daily needs. So before starting the playground process, we tried to examine successful examples outside Greece, in Northern Europe, and we took some ideas in order to see how does this work and how does it fit on the Greek and on the Athenian environment. These were exactly the elements that we were also looking for in the playgrounds of Athens as residents in the city, and we try also the ideas to be familiar with what is taking place on the ground. Although the municipality of Athens embraced from the beginning the idea presented by us, we were faced with great difficulties because of the public sector and red tape bureaucratic mentality. However, 1 year after, dozens of personal appeals and a lot of personal effort by our team, we managed to overcome these difficulties and proceed to implementation. We began with the playground in Kalisperi, and then we continue with the one in Neos Cosmos. These now renovated playgrounds have been delivered to the public and are being used for almost a year. And in all our projects, and this is basically for us, we try to building momentum from the bottom up. In this context, and with regard to the 2 projects, before starting the project, we went to the neighborhood, we gave questionnaires, we discussed with the people, we saw the needs, we saw what the parents want in order to make sure that what we did fit the needs of the society and fit the needs of the neighborhood. It is not our intention to abandon the playgrounds once delivered to the municipality. Instead, working together with end users, residents and organizations, our intention is to maintain and preserve them, to improve them, and if possible so, to develop educational programs offering creative activities for children. Coming today, and I'm closing, coming to the question of today's discussion, I'm convinced that the deep crisis which Greece is facing also had a significant positive effect. The mobilization of donors and charities, together with the civil society, have led to higher standards for management capacity and transparency. The limitless social and material needs which arose force organizations to become more mature and donors to seek ways to ensure a more efficient and ethical management. As a result, there is now in place a critical mass of organization, a big ecosystem with know-how and capacity to lead us in taking the next step. Can't agree more with what Andreas Drakopoulos is saying from the beginning, that we do not wish to replace the role of the state and the government. Rather, the intention has to be to complement private and public efforts. Okay, sorry. I had some slides, but I didn't know that. No? Okay. So I'm just throwing some pictures from the playgrounds. So, rather, the intention have to be to complement private and public efforts, seeking to jointly develop programs in crucial areas such as welfare state and culture, which can help our people improve society and enhance public interest. I'm not at all certain that the Ministry of Health possesses more advanced expertise and has available better information than, say, the Stavros Niarchos Foundation regarding initiatives to combat poverty and handles the problem affecting the health sector in Greece. Or for that matter, that the Ministry of Culture is more knowledgeable than their organization or the Niarchos Foundation in matters of contemporary cultural expressions. I'm convinced that the future lies to public-private partnership as a response to conflict between public and philanthropy. In order that to be successful, we have to have big-scale projects and substance. I think we have to think differently on how we engage in discussions with the government. We need the private sector, the philanthropists and the NGOs to be part of the design and strategy of the projects, not just the implementation. We need government and local authorities, municipalities, to start trust more and take advantage of the innovation, the energy, and the problem-solving mentality of the NGOs. All the stakeholders in the public-private partnership have to function with transparency and free from all paternalism, have to offer effective solutions to people. It is, however, I think important that both philanthropy and the public interest adopt a common approach based building momentum from the bottom up, from individual citizens and their needs to meeting needs at the level of the municipality, region, or the country. I would like to finish with a quote from a book you gave us yesterday from a woman which I didn't know, Tupper Thomas, who spent her career championing the public-private partnership that enabled the restoration of Prospect Park in Brooklyn, New York. There's a big difference between doing well in the world and doing good in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Varvitsiotis. Mr. Todd Bishop from the Museum of Modern Art of New York, known as MoMA, will now tell us a little bit about MoMA's path, its course. We know that it's been flourishing in the city of New York, but we can also hear about the problems that have arisen, and he can tell us how these problems were resolved. I'd like to say that MoMA is a very popular museum, but the fact that it's so popular to the people of New York, but also to those visiting New York, does not make it something without problems. There are always problems. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the Niarchos Foundation, Andreas and Stelios, for all they've done to welcome me here, and also for the support they give the museum. I want to embarrass two of our Niarchos interns. I'm sorry they're in the fourth row, but Angeliki and Dimitra, I've spent more time with you the past few days, and you're both very extraordinary, and we're really pleased to have you. Before I get into what you might consider problems, I thought I'd just give a little bit of background on the museum. MoMA was founded in 1929, and it was founded by 3 philanthropic women. One of those women was Mrs. Rockefeller, Abby Aldrich Rockefeller. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to establish a museum that was a reaction to the status quo. They had discovered modern art, and they wanted to share that knowledge with everyone. And how they did that is they established an educational institution. It actually wasn't established as a museum per se. We are a Board of Regents accredited educational institution with New York State. So Alfred Barr, the founding director, he saw modernism and the Museum of Modern Art not just as a museum, not just as an educational institution, but as a laboratory for investigating new ideas. So we remain an educational institution, and we can talk a little bit about buildings and our role in the community, but our role really for us is clinging to the mission of educating people. of preserving, collecting, and educating people about modern and contemporary art. Nancy Cass earlier today said, one of the issues is, one of maybe the ethical issues around philanthropy is really sticking to what you do, and I couldn't agree more, and I'll get into that a little bit more, but mission, mission, mission. Our mission is very clear, and we want to stick within that mission, and that has a lot to do with what sort of philanthropic gifts we receive. Just a little background too, we had over 3 million visitors. As you said, it's a very popular museum. We have 140,000 members. Those are people who believe in the institution, from a student to a high-level donor. 60% of our visitors are international. So actually, for example, some of our colleague institutions in New York, it's the reverse, but 60% of our visitors come from other countries. And 10% of our membership is international, which is also remarkable, that people want to give in some way and then continue to give. Again, this could be $60 a year over and over and over, even though they don't even visit the museum. MoMA is also organized, as many know, it's not organized necessarily by geography or by chronology, it's organized by medium. So early on, Barr and the early curators started collecting by department, by medium. So there is a department of painting and sculpture, department of drawings and prints, film, one of the first museums to collect film, media and performance, photography. This is an important aspect of what we do because we're not monolithic. We do things in smaller ways, in small committees. We collect in committees. We decide in committees. When I was asked to participate, when Stelios showed me the topic, I thought philanthropy and conflict. And as a fundraiser, I thought, oh God, I don't know, is there conflict in philanthropy? I don't know about that. But then actually, I started to really dive into that, and I think it's really interesting, and I really learned a lot from the participants early on today. One interesting thing about MoMA is that we are a private not-for-profit. We accept no government money whatsoever for our operating. And our income, our revenue is based on admission and philanthropy. So we really are a philanthropic-driven institution. What that does, and I admire the public-private partnerships, and I admire the difficulty that can bring. But what that does for us is it allows us to be independent curatorially and independent programmatically. We would never accept any sort of support that would deviate us from our mission. I'll give you an example, and often examples are given that corporations drive philanthropy in their direction. And I'm sorry to use the word drive because I'm using Volkswagen as an example. So Volkswagen, we are in a philanthropic partnership with Volkswagen, and they support many things that we do. One thing that we had wanted to do was we had started prototyping online courses. And we wanted to reach more people, even more people than the 3 million. We wanted to reach people in an in-depth way. And what better way to do that than online courses? We knew what we wanted to do. We had a prototype. We did not have the funding to fully realize it. Volkswagen came in and helped us realize that mission-based educational interest of ours. And we've been able to reach, I think we're over 100 countries of people taking live online courses and module courses. So those are really the basic things I wanted to say as far as the background of MoMA. MoMA I think people think of MoMA as always in one place and one time, but when you think about it, we were founded in 29, it's 2014 now. There's been an entire trajectory of buildings and expansions, and expanding of the collection, which is the most important, and I'm happy to answer more questions about that. Thank you.
So before asking questions to the panelists, we have some questions for the audience, and you can vote, because these are multiple choice questions. You have to pick one of the answers. So I'm going to read these out loud, and then after voting, you'll see what answers have been given by the audience. So I'm sure you're aware of this because we've done this before. And then if we have time, we can make comments on the answers given. So a question that we'd like to ask you is the following. What should a foundation focus upon? So, oh, everything's written down. Great. It's on the screen. And here you can see the possible answers. And you have to pick one of these answers. So the second question, and let's wait for them to appear on the screen then.
Ωραία. Ωραία. Να δούμε τι οδηγεί.
So let's see what answers will be given. Good. So here are the answers. So we see that answer number 2 is the one most people voted for, i.e. that change and improve the conditions and the environment within which it operates. 53.8% of the votes. Okay, correct. I think this is the most optimistic and politically tainted, if you like, answer. So maybe we could comment this answer. What do you think? Any comments regarding this answer, answer number 2? Thank you.
Βλέπουμε ότι ζητάει το κοινό.
So we see that the audience wants a foundation to be energetic and it can change and improve the conditions and the environment within which it operates. So we see that there's a purpose behind what a foundation does and that it tries to promote the general good and public interest. So is this something that you would have expected as an answer? What have you got to say about this, Mr. Daskalopoulos?
The group's answer to the question that we had here about the presumed conflict between philanthropy and the public interest. I mean, what this says is that by definition, making grants and doing good changes and improves the conditions for everybody. So that is public interest. In that sense, I say, you know, sorry to shoot down the subject, but I think that comes from a presumption of questioning the motives, usually, behind philanthropy and public giving. But as public interest goes, the motives do not matter. It is an act of vanity, a complex of inferiority sometimes, a need for reassertion. Before we were talking about increasing, it is the pursuit of power or influence. But what counts is the effect on society and the change it can create. And I think that, by definition, cannot be against public interest.
Nice.
I think that this is sorry, can I add something?
Yes, a very short comment.
Yes, I think that this is too vague into general, what we just read, and this is, it's right, but it has also to do with the mandate of each foundation and the mission of statement that it has. But of course, and if there are procedures and there is the ethical issue which should always be present, then this should be the mission of state of a foundation in that case.
Nice. Mark?
Well, I don't think it's an issue of really questioning people's motives. I think it's the role of ideas and ideology, perhaps, in not giving them a clear image of what the possibilities are. I think there was a Greek philosopher, Plato, who had this metaphor of the reality being reflected from the back in the cave. And I think sometimes that deformed reality perhaps drives decisions and makes it more difficult, not because of bad motives, but because it's harder to see exactly what is in front of you.
Yes. Thomas?
Oh, I was wondering if the same question was put on another country, let's say on a country which there is dictatorship, are we going to have the same answer, or I mean, the environment changed the answers? Because I don't know, this is the next.
This is the next question.
Yeah. But I'm not sure that I think that it's case by case. I mean, of course, in the Western democracies, maybe this question is fully acceptable, and probably this is going to be the case for all the countries of the Western democracies. But what about, I don't know, a small country in Africa which has dictatorship? Maybe, you know, the answer there is, I want them to push more in order to have changed the government. So it has to do a lot, I think, with the social and economic conditions of each country.
Okay, let's see what are the answers for that. Todd will make his comment. You can vote.
Vote first.
Very, very interesting. There are about 4 out of 10 that believe that state is not responsible for the welfare of its citizens.
Maybe this is a case of whether the cup is half full
Yeah.
or half empty. For that result, in the United States would be considered quite extraordinary that the percentage would be so high. But perhaps here in Greece, things are different.
I agree with Mark. I completely agree. I think if this was in a room somewhere else, you might see a different result. I think it also, you know, and we've discussed this yesterday and earlier today, what does welfare mean? You know, what does that mean?
I think, but I think even in the United States, the historical tradition, the tradition of the declaration is that the state is responsible for the happiness for every citizen. Now we see, even not for the welfare, not for the happiness even. It's after 200 years, 2.5 centuries, everything has changed. Even the founding fathers of your constitution and our constitution are not valid anymore.
Well, I think you would see it skewed the entirely opposite way,
Yeah.
and it's gone the other direction over time. But I think, you know, it's easy to say that in the United States it might be skewed. I think state by state, not to get into local politics, would also be very, very different. If you did this in Texas and if you did it in New York, I think you would have a very different result. But I do think it's interesting to understand, what does welfare mean? Is welfare complete happiness? Is welfare physical security? What does welfare mean and how broad is it? I think that might change the percentage as well.
Okay. Let's have some questions from the floor. You agree? Because we have a very good audience, and they are listening very patiently. And now maybe they want to ask something to all our panelists. We have some. 2, okay. 3.
Γιάννης Τροχόπουλος, Κέντρο Πολιτισμού Ίδρυμα Σταύρος Νιάρχος.
Cultural Center, Stavros Niarchos Foundation. I would like to ask, do you have any experience on how much time is needed in order to have contact with people, gain contact with people when there is a private initiative, a project that to some extent has to do with the local community, either in a specific area? So you mean field research, preparation? Yes, that's what I mean. Was there some consultation and and when consultation showed that the project was not acceptable, would you move forward with the project or not? In 1985, I had exactly the same problem. We had to build a certain building, and we had to expropriate the property, the building plot, follow, that is, the procedures of the state, or consult local people. I sacrificed 3 years in consultation, and the local inhabitants were persuaded, and they were the first members of the organization that was established 3 years later. Look, I believe that there has to be a minimum consensus as regards projects of large-scale or smaller-scale interventions, and especially in Greece. It's very difficult either for the state or for private organizations to succeed in their projects if there is not some consultation, because there is always strong criticism, and people are against your project because you actually change the convenient way they have been used in to live. So it's difficult to impose things from above, from the top, when the bottom, when people do not consent. And part of the success of projects is this consultation. And this is what philanthropic organizations and institutions have to do. They have to educate people and show them how things will change. This is in order for us to build trust. Allow me to take the opposite, let's say, view and say that in Greece, after so much discussions, it's time to have actions. Let's evaluate these actions afterwards. I don't believe that the 3 years of consultation were the reason why local community accepted your project. It's because your project was good, and we usually in Greece hesitate. We usually hesitate when we hear about a new project, and we want to hear the different views. But in Greece, this continuous consultation has led us to inertia and destruction. The gentleman and Mr. Vasilakis, and then I can see another hand there at the back.
Classical studies, my neighbor here suggested I make the comment. If we return to the last question, who has the primary responsibility for the welfare of the citizens? Aristotle gave us the answer. It's the state. And the reason it's the state is because the state is made up of its citizens. It's a kinonia. And I think we all know this. And it actually speaks directly to the issue of whether or not there is a conflict between philanthropic and public interest. In ancient Greece, euergetism, evergetismos, was practiced as a part of the responsibility of citizens, especially of citizens who had special abilities and special resources, to return to the state and provide for public good, because it's all about the public good. And the public good can be accomplished by the proper relationship between philanthropic and public interests. So the answer to that question, and certainly at the core of this excellent panel, would be a discussion about Aristotle's understanding of the state and the role of the citizen within the state. And I would just make one other comment in that regard. There has to be a balance, and Mark Stern talked about this, Those of us who live and grew up in Philadelphia know much about this. What is that relationship? It gets out of balance, absolutely, as he emphasized, when the philanthropic interest interferes in a way that disrupts the ability of communities and individuals to chart their own course in relation to and within the state that they live.
Mark.
Just mention the political party that controls Congress in the United States hasn't read Aristotle, and by and large, I think they see him probably as an immigrant, potential immigrant, and you know how they feel about immigrants in that party. So, but it's a useful point.
Mr. Stelios Vasilakis.
Yes, this is a question primarily for Efitsiotou and touches upon the issue we debated earlier today of to what extent foundations, non-for-profit institutions should get involved with issues of policy and influencing policy. Both foundations, the Stavrouniakos Foundation and the Onassis Foundation, seem to have been involved in similar projects. In a way, you were asked by the state to provide support for the planning to rethink the center of Athens, in the same way that we have been asked by the state to provide support for the planning, just the planning of the coastal front, the Falliro coastal front. If now, after we provided the support and the planning has been completed, if the state does not undertake what was supposed to do, to what extent us, the Onassis Foundation, the Niarchos Foundation, has to get involved now with pushing the state, implementing policy changes if there's need to do so, in order for our support to be realized? How much should a foundation get involved after what it was asked to do has been done?
Thank you for the question. This is a very nice question. We have also considered this issue, and the foundation has accomplished, as I said, the project has delivered the studies to the state, and now we are trying to, as citizens from the other side, to push things to be done. To what extent should a foundation interfere or intervene within this is a matter of also for the social society. I mean that we cannot push or make the state adopt the project because it's up to them. They strategically designed the project. They have taken all the legislative procedures done. And from what we see, the procedures are proceeding. We see that the project will be implemented. So we do worry, but we're very optimistic about it. So we have never taken action in any other course, like for the public space. This is our first truly very big collaboration with the state. And up until now, as I said, we had a very, very good collaboration at all levels. So we do worry as citizens, but I don't think that the foundation would take any action, any legal action or any pragmatical action to make the state do it, because it's their job. They have to do it. They have understood the necessity, and because they designed it, they thought of it, and I'm sure they'll do it. So I don't think that we would do much more than what we've done already.
Okay, one more question, because it's 1:05 now. Kyrios, okay. Δίπλα σας.
The gentleman over there next to you.
I represent the Israel Antiquities Authority, and we're very involved in public-private development of archaeological parks and so on and so forth. There's a big issue relating to maintenance. Once you finish the project, what happens then? Private funding is great. They love to give, to build it, to make it available. And then the question is, what happens? Who maintains it? How do you make people come there? How do you make sure it doesn't deteriorate? You touched a little bit upon it. But this is a major issue, and I don't know how it's handled here in Greece. So when you do a park like this for kids, Do you work with the municipality to make sure that it's maintained for the next 10 years? Do they have the budget to maintain it? These are practical issues, but they relate really to the big project that the Onassis is doing, the cultural center that we saw here. And from experience, we know that it's a tricky issue.
Right, and this was one of our concerns, and still is. I mean, you do a project, you give to the municipality, they don't have the budget, they don't have the money, so then in a year the whole project is run down. So we try, and we have an agreement with the municipality that we're going to support any small kind of interventions they need in order to be the park the playground on a good condition. Still, you don't have any guarantee. You have to have build relation with the municipality. That's why coming back on how do you build relation with the society around. And now, let's say in the one playground that we've done in Kalisperi next to Museum of Acropolis, next to the playground there's a school. So the school, because they like it and they love it so much, they've been the ones who protect the playground. And we've been together with the kids, with the teachers, in order to make sure that they grow up the plants, they take care of it. So, I mean, I totally agree, and this is part of the problem. That's why I said, and I believe that the PPP partnerships, they have to be from the beginning. I mean, you have to develop the strategy from scratch. You can't go and say, okay, I want to build that, give me the money, and that's it. I think from the beginning, you have to have a strategy about what you do, how do you do, and how do you maintain. It's not always easy. I know it's difficult. And I think this is one of the most critical things that are happening right now in projects in Greece, that we've seen fantastic projects, but then they are not, you go back and you see something that you don't recognize.
But could I just add something? That's not just in the public sphere. Private institutions also run into this issue, where they build buildings, they build institutions, and then don't have endowment or an operating plan to actually run those institutions. So it's not, and it happens in the United States, and it's, I mean, Mark talked about it a little bit, and it's not necessarily the fault of the institution, but it is something that has to be grappled with for the future for all institutions and building projects.
Okay, you have something to add, Mark?
Just one last point. I'm sure everyone's hungry. Very often in European conversations I've been in, there's been this conflict that voluntary action works against public action. And I'd say from the standpoint of the history of social welfare in the United States that it hasn't worked that way. That in fact, periods in which we see mobilization by local people around concerns are also issues in which that's been translated into public action. So I think this issue of how you mobilize publics doesn't have to be seen as voluntary or the state. I think very often it's how the two can complement each other in terms of moving forward.
Okay, one more question, and the last one. There was an asking lady.
Hello, my name is Konstantina Karidi. I'm currently advisor to the mayor of Athens, but I'm also a researcher and co-founder of a regional organization called Balkans Beyond Borders, which works on youth participation through cultural innovation. So I'm speaking on my own right. And I just want to follow up on the previous comments on the role of the state and the bottom-up activities and this relation. And I think that in a way we are in a process that the concept we have about the state is transforming, and maybe we should step back and rethink of how we face it. So maybe we should also think on whether the state is simply a moderator, which is how we often tend to think of it these days, or whether it is here also to provide solutions or take decisions, even at the local level. And these are questions we have also debated with my colleagues often. So there was in Athens a relatively famous case in the media of the Atanissas group intervening in Kolonaki, which is an area at the center of Athens, and they painted the steps. And the question that is raised there is whether it's the local people who have the say whether they like this intervention or not, or whether it's, let's say, the community of Athens overall, of the citizens, whether they like it or not. And, you know, I just simply put these questions on the table because I think they should be raised, who decides or not. And I think that the state, whether it is the local municipality or for bigger projects, the central state, has or should have a say in this or facilitate at least the dialogue. And I will also say the example of Brussels, where I know there, and in London as well, you have the local community councils, and they take the decisions. So maybe here in Greece, we should also see the role of the local community councils. This is just the points I wanted to raise. Thank you.
Okay, there is any remarks or no? Okay.
Well, this is subject for a 3-hour debate.
Let's do it another time.
Yes.
Okay. Ήταν μια συζήτηση.
This was a very interesting discussion. The previous panel was late, but we still took up a lot of time ourselves. This is a very important subject. I think that we just touched upon it. We didn't have enough time to do more, so this is just food for thought. In the coming years in Greece, there will be a lot of opportunities to discuss this further. Now, whether there is some patronage on the part of the individual intervening in the public space, whether there is a justified or unjustified lack of trust on the part of the citizens vis-à-vis these interventions, how ways can be found to engage in a discussion and to have some kind of conciliation or even involvement, joint involvement of the private and public sector. In Greece, this is something that will be discussed a lot in the future, not just in the economy, but also in the public sphere, in culture as well, but also in education, and how large philanthropic organizations can intervene in all of this. So these are new challenges, particularly in Greece, but also in Europe, because Europe is turning a page and it has to rethink a lot of things in the economy and how we can bring together the public and the private sector. So I think it's an excellent opportunity because we've started talking about philanthropy, but now we're entering into a lot of other fields as well. And we really need to think. We need to think in a holistic way, but we also have to think being calm. So we shouldn't only look at what's happened in the past, but we should look forward as well. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the Stavros Niarchos Foundation, but I'd like to particularly thank the panelists. I'd like to thank Mark Stern, Ted Bishop, Mr. Thomas Varisiotis, Mrs. Tsiotou, Mr. Daskalopoulos. So I'd like to thank them for their input, for their contributions, and this is all based on a personal experience, personal thoughts, and a personal intervention in the public sphere. So thank you very much for your participation, and I'd like to thank the audience as well. Thank you very much.
If I can have your attention for 1 second, we are moving straight into the 2 breakout sessions. The first one on culture and education will take place in this room, and the second one on volunteerism will be outside on the Athena room, which is, if you go to the lobby towards the right, it is downstairs. For the sake of brevity, we are going to have a rather quick lunch today, about 30 minutes. So please keep that in mind. Thank you.
Everybody. That.
Πες το, εσύ.
Please take your seats as we can start, please.
Ωραία, okay. Άρα με ποια σειρά θα πάμε? Πρώτη εσύ. Α, συγγνώμη. Πρώτη θα είστε εσύ. Εσείς όπως θέλετε. Ξεκινήσουμε από εσάς. Okay. Μπορούμε να ξεκινήσουμε.
I think it's time for us to begin. So please take your seats. Those of you who would like to participate in this breakout session, which is on culture and education, please take your seats so that we may begin, because we are running a bit late. So in this session, we will try to stick to the time allotted to us. We're going to be brief and succinct.
We are very happy to have you with us today. The topic of our discussion is Culture and Education Transforming Our Future, the case study of the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Cultural Center. Now I would like to introduce our esteemed panel, starting from left to right. Mr. Laszlo Yagabo-Orsos from USA, Director of Penn World Voices Festival.
Hi, everyone.
Ms. Susan Plin from Italy, Head of Fundraising and Marketing at Teatro Comunale di Bologna. Mr. Nate Hill from USA, Assistant Director of Chattanooga Public Library. Mr. Orestis Andreadakis, Artistic Director of Athens International Film Festival. And Ms. Ellie Andriopoulou, Chief Operating Officer of SNFCC. Hello. Before we hear what our guests have to say on this subject, I would like to say a few words as an introduction to the topic. I will speak in Greek.
So changes are so rapid that no matter what you say, you already think it's obsolete and outdated, that the present is already history. So in the environment here in Greece with a crisis, time is in fast forward. There's confusion, there's populism, there's ignorance, and a lot of things are presented in a distorted way. So, however, in this environment, we have contribution and creativity, which also seem to be flourishing. This is something we cannot ignore. So the question is, can culture and education transform our future? What will the place of a new opera and a new national library be in a society that has been troubled by the crisis? It's uncertain and there's lack of trust, and it's also disoriented. It's lost its footing. The answer in the Greece of the crisis is complex. I think the answer will be provided by the knowledge worker of the 21st century, a person with many skills, a person who's flexible, a person who adapts easily, a person who believes in lifelong learning. This is the knowledge worker that will be created in the library of the future. It cannot be shaped outside the library because whatever includes knowledge is not cut off from society. Why is that the case? Because today, since knowledge is available on all devices linked to the internet, what you know are less important than what you can do with what you know. So the ability to find answers to problems in a creative way or to bring to the fore new abilities and skills such as critical thinking, communication, and collaboration are more important than academic knowledge itself. So let's go back to the main question of our meeting today and of our breakout session. So the question is, how do culture and education transform our lives? When the French President François Mitterrand was asked why he creates large-scale projects, I'm talking about cultural projects in France, he answered, because they enhance our sense of pride and because they also are good for human dignity. In 1982, Mitterrand announced the construction of the biggest and most modern library in the world, which will be on all cognitive subjects. It will be accessible to all, make use of modern technology. There can be distance learning, and it will be connected to all other large European libraries. Since 1996, when the new National Library of France started operating, we had the increase not just in the number of visitors, both physical and electronic, but there was also yet another incentive for one to travel to France. So in 2016 will be the beginning of a new course for Athens when we have the inauguration of the Cultural Center Stavros Niarchos Foundation. But this transformation cannot happen overnight. We know that everybody must know about it. This transformation does not happen overnight. It needs method. You need to penetrate society and you need space. And such a large project, in order for it to take root, you need to have a big heart and you need to be able to engage in creative thinking and criticism. You have to turn time into your ally. Mr. Yannis Trochopoulos, who is director of the Cultural Center Stavros Niarchos Foundation, says that we are joining forces in order for our children to enjoy a national library which will leave its mark on the history of Greece 20 years from now. So we have to say that this thought is realistic, but it's also encouraging because in this country, particularly in this period, we need prospects that are shaped through truth and through reality. So we know that every small step will lead us to the achievement of a common cause. We have to join forces. There mustn't just be empty words. We know that waiting for something is a collective effort, just like conquering things. So now I would like to give the floor to Mrs. Eli Andreopoulou. She will talk to us about what will happen, about the efforts and the efforts that you already have carried out, how you're trying to create an audience even from now, and what about the sustainability of this very large and very important project. Thank you very much. I'm going to go to the podium now. Just one last detail. I'd like to ask you not to speak for more than 5 minutes in your initial presentation so that we can have time for questions, so that we can come back and have a second or even third round. So please be as brief as can be. Thank you. I'm going to speak in English.
And thank you, Mrs. Katsunaki, for the introduction to our topic today. It really is a pleasure and an honor to be here and to present to you, and to be the case study of this panel for the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Cultural Center. And I really look forward to your views on what we're about to present, as well as the views of my distinguished fellow panelists. A few basic facts about the SNFCC. Sorry, it's not working. Okay. Okay, here we are. So as most of you may be aware, it will host the new buildings of the National Library of Greece and the Greek National Opera, and it will also have a park of 170,000 square meters, the Stavros Niarchos Park. It is located south of Athens. Most of you had the opportunity to visit it on Wednesday evening and watch the great Dance of the Cranes event. And it is the largest grant of the Stavros Niarchos Foundation. The budget for the project is 566 million euro, and it covers the studies, the outfitting, and the construction of the cultural center. Upon its completion, it will be donated to the Greek state. And the center was designed by Renzo Piano Building Workshops and is being built by the joint venture of Impregilo Derna. This is a view of the SNFCC, an aerial view of how it will look like when it's completed. The pointer can be seen. The large white square is the canopy over the opera building, the energy canopy. Next to it to the right, it looks like a park, but it's the green roof of the National Library. And on top of the two, as we see it, is the parking building, which also has a green roof. So as you can see, 85% of the entire site will be covered by the Stavros Niarchos Park. Another view from the northeast, you can see the opera building. To its right is the library building and the water canal. A view of what the National Library will look like. The ground floor is actually currently being redesigned, because once the National Library of Greece moves to the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Cultural Center, it will also add a public library to its offering and services. And this public library is being designed according to the latest trends in public libraries, where they're not just a place to go and read or borrow books, but actual community centers. And it will have the spaces such as a children's library, an entrepreneurship center, a media lab, a recording studio, to be able to be that community center. Sorry, I have a slow reaction. This is a view of the Opera House. It's the main auditorium, state-of-the-art, 1,400 seats. And the opera building will also have an experimental stage, a very flexible stage with up to 400 seats, and a ballet school. And all these new facilities will enable the opera to host international productions, co-productions, and really expand on the repertoire that they are currently hosting. And this is a view from the north of the Stavros Niarchos Park. In addition to just being a beautiful place to walk through, we envision that it will have many educational and cultural events going on in its very different spaces throughout the park. Sorry, could you switch my slide? Thank you. So a project of this scale will have immense impact on the society, and I don't think we can even begin to understand the overall impact it will have before its completion. But there are three types of impact we're expecting it to have. First of all, social impact. One of the key themes and key values of this project is accessibility. And this is both physical accessibility, but also social accessibility. So the facilities and infrastructure have been built in a way that are accessible, but we also hope that the programming, with a lot of free educational programming, will remove other barriers to access. With regards to environmental impact, the project is already a model of construction, environmentally responsible construction, and aims to achieve the LEED Platinum certification, which is the highest level of certification for environmental sustainability. The economic impact, sorry, previous slide still, thank you. The economic impact is something we're already starting to witness, and it has been especially important in the Greece of today throughout this crisis. According to BCG's study of 2010, the construction will create an economic stimulus of 1 billion euro and will create up to 2,400 jobs related to the project. And once it starts operating, then it is expected that the economic contribution will be another 160 million a year. One back, thank you. So a project of this scale, which is built for the Greek people and is donated to the Greek state, can only be implemented successfully through a public-private partnership. And in this partnership, the private sector, the Stavros Dianos Foundation brings the investment and brings the expertise, but then it is only the state that can carry this through and create the social and lasting impact that one would hope with this. So the foundation, as I mentioned, is paying for the construction and all related equipment and studies. It is also creating an organization. The SNF SA, upon delivery, will take over the facility management for the entire complex, will be responsible for the park, and will do programming and events in all the public spaces. Additionally, and this is not related is not part of the Stavros Dianos Foundation Cultural Center grant, but as part of its grant-making activities, the foundation is also offering grants to the library and the opera to enable them to build their audiences and to prepare for the services and programs they want to offer in the new facilities. On the other hand, the state is providing the land for the construction of the SNFCC. It is funding and staffing the two national organizations. This is the case today and will continue to be the case once they move to the new facilities. And following the completion of the project, they will also take ownership of this SNFCC SA umbrella organization and be responsible for its funding and operation. We believe that a project of this magnitude needs many success factors in order to come together at the end. Facilities need to be inviting and they need to be functional. And we really believe that with Renzo Piano as an architect and the multitude of consultants who have worked on this project, we're okay with the facilities. The next really important element is programs and events. And this is for all spaces and by all organizations that will be situated in the cultural center. Programs and events is the only way to turn visitors, people who just come to see the architectural marvel, to patrons, and that will be key to the success of the cultural center. Finally, we are working on creating a very high quality visitor experience, from parking to ticketing to restaurants. All this is part of the success. And these three first elements are something, if we get them right, would secure the visitors, but the project could still not succeed if we don't get the operating model right. And that is key to sustainability, both on the expense side and on the revenue side. And let me talk a little bit more about that. So in terms of the infrastructure, and there were related questions this morning too on sustainability. What the foundation has tried to do is to create the absolute best standards and prerequisites to ensure the environmental and operational sustainability of the center. So for example, part of the project is creating an energy canopy of 10,000 square meters, which will cover the majority of the energy needs of the cultural center. The park irrigation system and the gray water system basically ensure that we won't need to draw from the drinking water public system for the needs of the cultural center. And of course, elements such as the green roof, the trees and plants, the canal, they create a microclimate, they reduce the temperature both inside and outside the buildings. So this has a real impact both on the environment, but also on the future needs of the cultural center for its operation. Now on the funding side, this is a state-owned organization. It will be state-owned. So the majority of the funding will come from the state, but we shouldn't just rely on the state. Again, it was analyzed quite a bit in the previous panel. There are many EU programs for cultural and educational activities, and that's something that we're preparing to be able to absorb. We are building fundraising capacity, and we will also have revenues from the services offered to the public, such as parking, restaurants, cafes, and of course, ticketing from events. With regards to pre-opening engagement, and Ms. Katsunaki asked that during her introduction, just because we build it, it doesn't mean that people will just come. It's important to, in addition to setting operating models and talking about processes and sustainabilities, this is for the people. And it's really important to win the hearts and minds of everyone before we even open the cultural center. So there are two ways that we've already started doing that. One is we've created a visitor center right next to the construction site with a great view to the site where people can come and see the progress of the construction works, but they can also experience just a small taste of what we hope they'll experience in the cultural center through educational and cultural programs. At the same time, not everyone can come to us, so we are going to them through a program called the Journey to the SNFCC, where in collaboration with our key future partners, the opera, the library, and WWF, we are going to municipalities for the time being around Attica. It will be expanded to other areas in Greece. And we are creating awareness about the cultural center and again, providing a taste of what this will offer in the future with free Don Giovanni opera performances, with film workshops, digital film workshops in the local municipal libraries and activities in the local parks. Let me just close by showing you, last slide please. Yes, this is one of the original sketches of Renzo Piano. As you can see the hill of the park where we were on Wednesday night and the canopy over the opera. This is his writing on top, and he called this place topos, which is the Greek word for place. On Wednesday night, he talked about the energy and the joy and the optimism that Wednesday's event brought to the place. And we hope that this energy, optimism, and joy will continue to be there once the SNFCC opens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Andreopoulou, for your very comprehensive presentation of what will be created, which is such a large project. And of course, in order for you to be able to present all this in such a short space of time, there needed to be discipline. And I'd now like to give the floor to Mr. Orsos, who knows very well what it means to deal with literature at a time when people surf on the internet. And in New York, he's been managing a literary festival which has already been in existence for 10 years.
We could show the film what we tried to figure out. Can we show the short video about the festival? I'm running a international literary festival in New York, and the last minute I said that it would be nice to look into this film. It's a 5-minute film, but we're gonna just interrupt it, just giving you the taste of the festival. So let's start it, and we're gonna just interrupt it at one point, okay?
When we first dreamed up this thing, we really had no idea how people would respond. It exceeded our wildest dreams.
I'm very excited. I was stunned by the turnout. When we got out of the taxi on the corner of 43rd Street and the line was making around the block, this is for literature.
New York is a city which has international festivals of everything, and it seemed nuts that there wasn't an international literary festival.
I mean, the city seems to be absolutely buzzing with Pen World Voices.
I think it's pretty incredible that poetry is still alive. Don't you? Well,
I sweep through city streets, my wings outstretched.
If you live in a conflict situation.
We were feeling that there was a kind of breakdown in communication between the United States and the rest of the world, and that at least at the level of art, the level of literature and ideas, we could do something to restart that conversation, to allow American voices to be in dialogue with world voices.
The people of New York have so obviously shown that this is a festival that they want to happen. And it's wonderful to see that, in the immortal words of Kevin Costner, if you build it, they will come.
The Pen World Voices Festival of International Literature starts tonight here in New York. It's the only gathering that celebrates international literature in the United States, and it features 150 writers from 40 countries in over 50 events.
In the program, I count writers and translators working in Arabic, Asante Tree, Basque, Catalan, Chinese, Danish, Dutch, German, Greek, Hebrew, Italian.
Some of the most articulate, most inspiring writers on the planet.
In America, it's not true that...
I came in from Los Angeles. It's been inspiring and wonderful.
My head is burning.
It's the big names, man. Gotta see them.
You obviously have to have, the best known names, but we've always tried to find hot young writers and try and introduce them to an American readership. Sometimes writers will come here and speak, and as a result of that, they leave with publishers.
Hi, I'm Zadie Smith.
So just to give you a taste of this festival, this is nothing less and nothing more than an international literary festival. There are more and more international festivals popping up around the world. There are at least, of my knowledge, there are at least 10, 12 major international literary festivals from Berlin to Shanghai to Melbourne. What really differentiates us, New York, is the, I think, fairly unique political agenda. This is the only literary festival which speaks and embraces and projects political mission and political notion. This is a festival which adamantly and obsessively tries to look at society through the lens of art, not just literature, through art. We're representing freedom of expression, First Amendment rights, and we're representing lots of writers and artists who are currently in prison or whose freedom is curtailed. So it's an edgy content. It's not easy to sell it to a larger public. So this is our biggest mission, to frame it and to sell it so people can relate to it. It's not entertainment in a kind of like the first-hand notion. It is not. It's actually work. So we want people to come to our festival and be inspired. So we're dealing with issues like prison system in America and the world. We're doing workshops with cab drivers of New York, the nannies and the house cleaners. We're doing immigrant workers workshops. While we are doing Salman Rushdie and Paul Auster, all the major names. We have big readings and kind of like traditional literary readings, but we also have out-of-the-box programming. And I have to say that out-of-the-box, kind of unusual programming is what really constitutes what we are. So this is our identity. So we do an obsession series late at night when we ask writers and philosophers from all over the world to come on stage and talk about, late at night, talk about one idea which doesn't let them sleep. And then we pair them with a shrink, with a psychiatrist, and then the audience joins. And people love it. And part of our mission is to actually bring in and embrace a different and larger audience. Of course, the younger people, that's a given. But also different kind of constituencies who wouldn't normally come to a literary festival. Because these names, as much as they are tempting, they can be actually frightening. So my aim with the new concept, or newish concept of the festival, to really show that literature is way more than just the Bond published book. And I have the feeling that Nate's going to talk about this, kind of like the similar notion. So what we actually heard yesterday, I think one of the presentations, I've heard that what we really have to, when we face with issues like unemployment, what we really want to kind of like project is really how to embrace and take risks, how to speak to situations like unemployment. What we're trying to do with art, with literature, and through the lens of art, we actually try to trigger these questions and try to emphasize that art and literature is subversive. We really want to understand that that's why we are doing it. Good literature, good art is always facing the uncomfortable, is unsettling. If you be able to talk to that, and if you actually are able to embrace this, then you may very well going to be able to answer or question some of the most burning issues of your own life. That's what we learn from art and literature. So that's why we are doing this festival, and that's why we love to do this festival, because every year we could see the projects and the changes. But this nothing 6 days festival triggers. So I see projects all over, not only in New York, but internationally too. It's part of the reasons why we are here, why I am here, because I hope at one point we're going to be able to work with the library here, bringing the same component. Not elegant, not just elegant, fancy events, but subversive and really unsettling events, which hopefully going to travel well here. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Pablo. Και τώρα η κυρία Πλήν.
And now the floor goes to Mrs. Plea, who knows very well what it means to try to find resources for cultural events in an era when the state is not present, sponsors are not there, and the people do not go out very easily.
Okay.
Should I go?
Okay. Of course.
Distinguished guests, authorities, ladies and gentlemen, and my amazing experienced colleagues with Maria Kazunaki. I am going to make it very short, and I want just to give you a little antipasta of opera. I know you can count down for lunch. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank the Greek National Opera and the Stavronikos Foundation for this fantastic opportunity to come and talk on very important issues for future growth and the impact in many, many fields of economic and youth growth and new ways of looking at opera in the future and the culture. We have to cut down very much, and I'm going to take very little time. I have a very long speech on cultural economics, but I want you to come back in the Opera House. Thank you to Myron Michaelidis, who is the conductor, who led us through a fantastic, extraordinary interpretation with a wonderful, top-quality orchestra of the Greek National Opera. For my first experience at all of Crane ballets, and I was really very much taken by it. So let me just tell you this. I have an experience, 30 years in, let's say, live performing arts and most aspect of the business in live performing arts. I'm an opera singer myself. I have a master's degree and I have a university degree, plus I'm a specialist in cultural economics and new modern fundraising methods. Said that, I want to say that I'm absolutely sure that the experience we have done in Italy and the experience and the shared knowledge that we have of the Opera Europa will absolutely be a beneficial knowledge and tool for the Greek National Opera. Opera Europa is 140 opera houses through Europe, and we are really much changing the way that we look at opera and the way that others look at how we run opera houses and the efforts we do to get audience, new audience and different target and segments into the opera house. So Cope Tobin, who is a fantastic Irish poet and writer, he said that opera is the nerve of Europe. And when I thought about what could I give your master listener in order for you to come back and tell what is opera about, is that I would like to talk a little about, I would like to start with Martin Luther King. King, he didn't say, I have a plan. He said, I have a dream. And the ability to take this dream into concrete and active actions will be the driver of the future, will be the way that you can gain the good perspective of the, let's say, shared goals and the set goals for the Greek National Opera and the Stavros Foundation Cultural Center. You have to take it to the world. It's absolutely fantastic, and it's a very important sign in this moment of crisis. Fact leads to conclusion, and emotions leads to action, was said by a very famous fundraiser. Opera produces GDP of 1.47%. It engaged like 6,000 people around Europe. I don't know what it's on the worldwide statistic. So it's an absolutely change into, we sustain it from an investment point of view. The Greek National Opera, under the guidance of Maestro Michaelidis and its fantastic musician and orchestra, will absolutely be able to deliver a fantastic success. It's about artistic level, it's about gaining the leader position on let's say artistic level, and also the way you run an opera house out from a modern perspective. That will be the challenge for you in the future. The Crane Ballet is already around, swimming in the internet, and I had some very nice and fantastic comments from people around the world, and of course they highly compliment this fantastic, let's say, first step to give a musical, let's say, shadow of the new opera house and of the cultural center. To be seen as an organization, donors will choose for impact investment. It's very important when you fundraise for culture that you really see all the new opportunities, that you create an audience building and training, and that you create this nice to have and need to have needs of the cultural life for performing arts and education. You have to create very good partnership. You have to encounter your donors in the life of the opera house. You have to, well, sell the benefits, not the features of this new opera house. I would like to just end before someone of you, after I'm available to take question on cultural economics and how do we have created this very, very strong GDP. Just let me add a little parenthesis to the 2.7% of the GDP production of the so-called cultural creative industries from the European community. A very good colleague and friend of mine, Sneska, is sitting down there. We did one work for 1 year together with Barroso on creating a new narrative for Europe, just starting from the artists and the creative minds around Europe to give Europe a new narrative, and that was highly inspiration. After this, I'm able to take questions and you can just come forward. So let me just end that the Greek National Opera will give the world's best show, and I'm sure that Lorenzo Piano, his attempt in the leaflet, he said to make a more beautiful place than what he found. And what Stavros says is that we owe it to the future generation and to our children. And the running of the cultural center is the best news of, let's say, of the future we could ever give. So thank you from my point of view.
Thank you, Suzanne. Ευχαριστούμε πολύ την κυρία.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Plin. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Nate Hill, who actually took a library which was totally outdated, but together with his colleagues, he was able to breathe new life into it. So please tell us what makes this fourth floor of the Chattanooga Public Library so unique. Thank you.
So much. Thank you so much for having me. And this has just been a complete inspiration listening to everybody else and everything they've had to say. I'm just delighted to be here. How many of you know where Chattanooga, Tennessee is? All right, that's pretty good. We're a mid-sized southeastern city in the U.S. And indeed, about 2 years ago, I moved to Chattanooga to start prototyping the library of the future. And it may seem like that's sort of an unlikely choice. I had been working in libraries in New York City and in the San Francisco Bay Area, so I was used to these very, very big places. But Chattanooga is a very special city. We actually have a gigabit fiber network underneath our entire city that is publicly owned. So we actually have some of the fastest internet speeds in our entire country. So when I'm thinking about the future of the public library, that seemed like it was a pretty good place to go. The other really desirable thing, and it doesn't sound desirable at first, but the other really desirable thing was that the library system was completely broken. It had been assessed as just being truly terrible. Sometimes when something is really very broken, it makes it that much easier to fix it. In a sense, anything you do, there's no way to fail, right? You always can go up from there. So this is a really interesting place to go and work. Our main building, and that's where this fourth floor that I'm going to talk about is, it's 4 different floors, each of which is about between 12 and 14,000 square feet. So it's very, very big. And it had been built in 1976. So it has that kind of old concrete brutalist architecture going for it. It's not a beautiful place. It really isn't. I mean, if you get into that kind of architecture, I think you can find it fun. But as I'm describing these new services and what we're up to, I need you to understand that this isn't like the incredible design opportunity that you have here at the Cultural Center to do all of this properly from scratch. So I was excited to move to Chattanooga because the 4th floor of this library had actually never been a public space. For the 30 years, it had been just collecting garbage. People had been moving all of the old furniture up there. It was a giant storage space. What an excellent opportunity to start thinking about what to do in the future. So I would like to present to all of you, well, I'll state something incredibly obvious, first of all. The internet is just been the greatest global disruptor ever, right? And what that's done for public libraries, people think that the disruption is through simple problems like, well, not problems, actually opportunities, like Google coming along. And now people can get the answers to their questions very easily online, right? Actually, what's happened with the internet is that we've really moved from this sort of read-only culture to a read-write culture. It's just as easy for any of you out there now to go and write and publish and distribute media of all sorts. So we don't have these long chains of production that we did in the past. When you think of Encyclopedia Britannica, something that would iterate once every year, now all of you can be out there editing a Wikipedia article while we're talking. And so we're iterating much, much more quickly. And so what this means is that there's this new kind of inequity, an inequity in the access to tools to create and to change things. And so this is really what has informed a lot of the services that we've designed in Chattanooga. Essentially what we're doing is we're moving away from this 20th century model where the library is a warehouse full of content, just for consumption, but moving into this new paradigm where we use the library as a place to produce new culture. And so that looks very different. That looks very different for our staff and how we staff the building. Everything about it is new. So I did, for those of you who use Twitter, I tweeted a link to photos of this space, which I think will help you understand. Somebody said yesterday that government doesn't have the ability to have as much research and development going on in their work. And I would say that one of the things that's very special in Chattanooga is that we put a lot of energy toward research and development. Our entire 4th floor is a place where we beta test new services, things that we plan to roll out across the entire system. So at the same time that the public is in getting access to all kinds of sort of specialized computing tools, 3D printers, laser cutters, all kinds of exciting equipment that they wouldn't otherwise have access to, we're also in there developing right alongside the public what our new services are going to be. So it makes it very easy for us to be agile and to iterate quickly. The other really important thing, and I want to make sure I don't run long here, but the other very important thing about how we work is that we recognize that the Library of the Future is this community platform, that there's no way that we can house all of the expertise and knowledge that our community has within the library. And this is, again, very different. This notion of completeness, that a library might be able to have everything, is just preposterous these days, right? There's no way that things can work that way. And so we celebrate the fact that, that knowledge is distributed throughout our community, and people can come in and collaborate with us and partner with us so that they can become smarter and so that they can make the rest of the community smarter. So almost nothing that we do on the 4th floor do we do alone. There's also been a lot of talk about startup accelerators and incubators of sorts in the past couple of days. And I would say that our local startup accelerator is one of our greatest partners. In many ways, we thought of the library when we were flipping things around because we were just so far behind. We needed to move quickly. But now we actually partner with them, and we're sort of a public path toward entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship can actually be sort of a snooty pursuit, right? Not everybody truly has access to this. And when somebody said yesterday that there aren't enough fundable projects, there might be funds, we think of the library as a great sort of fail space where you can come and you can try things over and over again until you get to that potentially fundable project. So we really create this equitable path toward some of the other resources that are around the community. Anyways, I can talk about this for hours and hours, and I will not do that to all of you right now. I hope that you'll have some great questions for me, and thank you again so much.
Ευχαριστούμε πολύ τον κύριο Neithiel και
Thank you very much, Mr. Neithiel. And now I give the floor to Mr. Andreadakis. He will speak about a cinema festival celebrating its 20 years. There are tens of thousands young people who are very good fans of this festival, which is expanding, isn't it, Mr. Andreadakis? Hello, on behalf of the company Pegasus and the International Festival of Cinema of Athens, good afternoon. There is something that we've been thinking of in the last years during the crisis. What is the benefit of our efforts in this era? What is the contributory benefit? What can we offer to the state and private sponsors in order to gain their support? These things should have been given, but what do we need to offer in return? This contributory benefit can actually address those who take up private or public support. The ancient Greek state had found a way to support civilization and culture. There was a very strict law which obliged rich people to become sponsors for cultural events, and they had no way to avoid sponsoring. What would they gain in return? As sponsors, they were allowed, if they won the competition, to have a banner. However, a banner at the time was a tripod with their name, which was placed in the central street of Athens. Please have a walk to the streets of Athens, and you will have a view of a banner like that, the Lysistrate banner, dating back to 334 BC. You will read that Lysistratus was the one who won the competition, and so on and so forth in ancient Greek. So Lysistratus, son of Lysithos, sponsored the event that won the competition. Then there are the names of the musicians and the name of the person who was the archon of the era. So we had honor for the sponsor, for the archon, and for the artists. In Athens, our festival is built upon this rationale. We are creating the appropriate climate for the state, the society, and the sponsors. We are trying to provoke a series of changes and alter the way we organize our events and the time of our events. We actually have 12 days of films in September, 120 films, some short films, independent cinema. And this is with the support with NSRF and the Greek Telecommunications Organization. But we are trying to break up this event into smaller ones and increase the events that will attract different sponsors. In this way, funding will return to the society through philanthropy. We want to promote our sponsors with our own banners. So a festival, a cinema festival of 12 days, cannot be dealt with as a closed event. It has to be an opportunity to have new scenarios and an opportunity to investigate opportunities for new partnerships. We hope that we will have the support of European programs, and we will have the opportunity to allow foreign producers to support Greek productions or film their own films in Greece. So in the era of downloading, we cannot be allowed to think that the only way to project a film is the cinema. So we're going out in the streets, and we have created the Athens Open Air Cinema Festival. And we have films shown in the open air, out in Athens, in parks, in open-air cinemas. And all these films are shown for free. This is how we give back part of the support we get. It's a unique experience to see the film Zelig by Woody Allen in the courtyard of the Byzantine Museum. This is how we attracted the interest of the National Tourism Organization. They support us because we have created the appropriate environment for tourists to come to Athens. And at the same time, we actually promote the commercial, let's say, part of the commercial activities of the area where this festival takes place. And the coffee shops in the area where we showed the films last year said that they had the biggest turnover in the year during our festival. A few days ago, the owner of a cinema told us that during the open-air festival, the bar of his cinema had an increase in its turnover by 800%. So, apart from this open-air festival, we also have another event which will last 4 years. And our effort is even for a duration of 12 months because we will be able to offer the schools the opportunity to play a game with the cinemas. And this is also supported by the Greek Center for Cinema. The Cinema Festival of Athens follows the following principle. Whatever does not become bigger, it will become smaller. So we cannot allow culture to become smaller in the era of crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Andreadakis, for this very lively presentation. So in order for Mr. Orso not to miss his plane, he's already missed one flight. We don't want him to miss a second one. So I will limit myself to the questions I have. I'm going to ask some questions to each panelist. So let me start from you, Mr. Orso, so that you can catch your plane. My question is, your festival. Okay. Your festival, the festival which you direct, does it have its own audience? Is it the literary audience? Do you only have a literary audience, or in the 10 years of operation? Because I think you celebrated 10 years of operation this year, right? So have you increased your audience? And if so, how did you achieve that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Since our incentive is so that we're trying to redefine what literature is, it automatically brings up the issue of redefining our audience. So we don't really want to speak to the literati per se. It's a kind of, we know that audience. It can be boring, it's predictable, it's a good, really kind of affluent audience. We don't really need those people. They will come. So what the real work is to expand, but while we are doing it, and this is the biggest challenge, not to dilute the content. So not to sell our souls, marketing and PR-wise, and shake our asses, sorry for my French, but to attract bigger audiences. No, the idea is really to appreciate and understand a larger constituents, what people can actually recognize in art, in literature, what should we address in politics, in everyday life, in even philosophy, journalism, how we can actually communicate. So that's a new discourse. And I'm actually happy to report that our audience is growing. Right now we have between 15,000 and 20,000 in a year. And for a kind of like an intricate subject of literature and philosophy, freedom of speech, it's not a small number. And we see a totally different audience. Of course, younger audience too, and this is a huge achievement. But what I felt this year, we just wrapped up our festival a month ago, I really felt that the rooms were charged, right? They really were connected, and the questions are changing. You know the audience questions. We're probably going to have some. So sometimes the audience questions can be tricky and challenging, but it's another way to, we're actually trying to curate the questions. We're trying to suggest themes which then can trigger different types of questions rather than just, when did you come up with this idea, J.K. Rowling? No, I mean, why don't we ask J.K. Rowling why she thinks that the word doesn't recognize the writer in her, some part of the word, the affluent literati word. So that's a shaky question, and that question came from the audience. I was really proud for that.
Thank you very much. Leon,
So I think it would be good to take advantage of the presence of Susan on this panel, of Suzanne. So we want to take advantage of your knowledge and specialty. So my question is, if there were 5 things that you could propose, 5 steps to Laszlo and Nate about their job. So if there were 5 things that you could tell them, what would that be? So what would you propose to them? Thank you.
Okay, I speak English, is that okay? Well, I have prepared a lot of steps to take for opera, but so this is really appealing to my creative perspective of life and things. I think that when you need to so they're very different. I mean, you took me by surprise, but 2 different, absolutely different issues and so on. One is very much library and getting out and doing new things and using the technologies and creating everything here. Let it happen here. Where Laszlo has a more, they have the icons, they have the stars. Oh, sorry. They have the stars, they have people coming in to, to look at the giraffe, I think, to pull people in there, because of course it's always interesting to see these names, these people. They are really original and they are trendsetter, they're fantastic. Well, my fundraising is a technique. It's a research-based technique. I mean, if we are talking about the ideas that I should give out to fundraising, I think what is absolutely important is to stop resilience, to stop complacency, create a sense of urgency, really see what is necessary today, wake up every day and say, what can I do to achieve a goal, to get young people in, to build an audience, to boost cultural tourism, like we did in Bologna, 8% growth, and which I'm sure this big idea of the new cultural center will be able to gain into also Athens. And I think that what is very important is, Laszlo said it and you said it, each of your own way, to stop this target segmentation and say culture is for everyone. Opera is for everyone. High-profile literary speeches. By the way, I'm very good friends of Umberto Eco, because he teaches just next door where I'm living. And so I think this is very important to say that if you have an education, if you have a population nurtured by culture and by music and by opera and beautiness, you will have a much better achievement in the society. One of the things that I wanted to point out, there was before sort of, would you think that the state should take care of and so on? And a lot of, I have 2 passports, Danish and the Italian one. And in Denmark, we pay 65% of taxes. So I would say, of course, the state. Other places, they don't do like that. So, I would say, well, of course, it is the state, but I need to be, as an individual responsible for the welfare system and all these things. But again, I think that creativity is, you can't put it in economic perspective, because it has always been there. It is the driver of everything in our society. This is what makes new aspect, new ideas, new, it's a part of the human being DNA. It's a part of everything that this thing is very, very difficult. So I really want to get back to, you have to be passionate about making the dream work, giving it feet to go on and make it growth. And then, of course, put the up-to-date knowledge and management method into this, just to keep it short.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. Νομίζω ότι το ίδιο, Suzanne,
I think, Suzanne, that the same goes for the National Opera. I think the same goes for the National Opera in Greece.
Well, let's say that that's a little different because opera is it has such an impact in society. It starts when the little child or the young girl or boy ask the mother or the teacher to play an instrument or to sing. So it depends. It's very much important that the impact, of course, comes from the return of every facet in the society, from education, from training, the possibility that there is a house where you can do this music. It is, let's say, the ultimate, most, when I call it the best show in the world, it really is. It really takes an amazing effort. It is so... But the same thing about philosophy and writers and filmmakers. I mean, you really need to be a professional and know your job in order to be able to stay there. Opera needs a conductor, opera needs an orchestra, opera needs a choir, opera needs session work, rehearsal, needs the most fantastic singers, the best conductors of stage conductors, and in order to create the illusion, the emotion. And I think that Combe-Tobin's speech on opera as the nerve of Europe is extraordinary because when you think about, now we're in Greece and I come from another very peace-loving country like Italy, but Ireland absolutely had tanks running around the streets with a confidential number, and opera was a way of making it possible to survive also. So I think that one of the things is very important also to look at the collective experience together in a room, live performing arts, besides all the very important, let's say, psychological and even physical factors that live performing arts gives you, which is a little more in the quantum physics, like the vibration and how do you feel and so on. So it's a very productive in all sense to have a well-functioning and well-prepared and up-to-standard opera house. So. Yeah.
Very much, Suzanne. And now I would like to ask you, Nate, is library still the right word for what you are creating in Chattanooga?
Yes, I would say that it is. Though it's easy to get caught up in the words. There's no doubt about it. I mean, when I look at the U.S., we have 9,000 public libraries around our country. I mean, that's an incredible infrastructure. It's just under 9,000. And when I look at the way that the world has changed and what people need to learn and do now, it would be crazy not to use that infrastructure appropriately. I think that we've been sort of stuck in this notion that libraries are about books and reading, which I love dearly, and I'm not trying to get rid of the books, but you have to understand that the libraries are really there. They're about shared resources at the root, and they're about learning. And reading and books are just one implementation of that. And we get stuck on that because that's been the knowledge transfer medium for a very, very long time now. But it's just, things have changed greatly. And so we need to get back to the core and stop focusing on the formats and focus more on the learning itself.
Thank you very much, Nate.
Orestes, I'd like to ask you a question on sponsorship. meaning who are your sponsors? You talked about the Center for Film, the Film Center, and the NSRF, money from the European Union. Is that sufficient? Is that enough? No, you have to go out and find private sponsors. We have quite a few private sponsors. We're talking about beverages, alcoholic beverages, car manufacturers, telecoms, and so on and so forth. The question is, how do you pick your sponsors, and what banner do you allow them to put up? Meaning you have to pick the sponsor the way you pick the artists you will work with, the films you'll show, and so on and so forth. Meaning you cannot allow a sponsor to ruin your festival. But sometimes sponsors just want to promote their products. They want to advertise their products and reap the benefits. So you have to take them by the hand. You have to help them create a banner like the Lysikrates banner. Or they have to find the right way to link your festival, your event, with their product. It's what the Athens Opera did. And I'd like to congratulate Mr. Michalilidis and Vasilis Louras from the National Opera, the Greek National Opera, for the wonderful thing they did. They had this wonderful sponsorship with Aegean, and I was envious. I was green with envy. I think we need to see what they did and try to follow that. So there was a sponsorship with an airline, and in order to advertise it, when there was a flight from Athens to Thessaloniki, they started listening to the opera of Traviata. So there were two people, two singers, one soprano and a tenor, and they sang the aria during the flight. This was wonderful. It went viral on the internet, and there was a perfect combination of Aegean. Everybody wants to fly Aegean now because they think that it's an art-loving airline. And this was a wonderful sponsorship for the National Opera. This is a wonderful example. Thank you, Orestes. Mrs. Andriopoulou. Mrs. Andriopoulou, in order for us to wrap up the discussion, you're the final speaker. So if you can choose, do you want to talk more about public-private partnerships? And then you can continue along the lines of what Orestes said, or you could talk about the audience, because it's very important to think about the audience, because we're talking about a very large project, but you need people to fill up the building. Well, the audience, that's a very important subject. As I mentioned at the end of my presentation, we've been working on building the audience. This is something we've been doing from now, and I heard some wonderful ideas expressed by the previous speakers, especially the literary festival was really interesting. I really like that, because what we saw is this is a festival where you normally don't have the audience you would normally expect. So I think we have to build the audience. And I know it sounds rather technocratic to talk about building an audience, but I think it's very important for you to give the opportunity to experience something. So the audience has to know what it will experience. And sometimes it's difficult in our case. So actually, we have to inform the public before the project is complete. And since it's not yet complete, the audience must participate in the dream and the vision, our vision for this project. And the only way to do this is for it to be able to understand what experience or part of the experience that we will offer them in the future. Now, you talked about public-private partnerships. Now, as far as public-private partnerships are concerned, so what I mentioned are obligations. That's the formal part. But in order for this to work in practice, you need collaboration. And nothing can be properly implemented without synergies and without collaboration. So this is done informally, but also formally. So there's a legal framework. There's a law which was recently voted by the Greek Parliament, which says how we do business together, how we cooperate. But there are also monthly meetings with all the representatives of the stakeholders. We're talking about the ministries, the Prime Minister's office, the mayor, and also the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Cultural Center. In these meetings, we talk about everything that is of interest to us, any problems that may have arisen in order for us to be able to resolve any issues. Thank you very much. So we've come to the end of the breakout session. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for listening. I'd like to summarize with 3 words: community, collectivity, passion. And I would like to thank the speakers. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank the audience. I'd like to thank the Stavros Niarchos Foundation for giving us this opportunity. And we do sincerely hope that you will convey this message to the others, i.e. that the future is already here. Thank you very much.